Jiangqing, Midsummer Night, the sprawling Shin family estate, spanning nearly 100 acres, was ablaze with lights, resembling a gilded palace floating in the night. Champagne towers rose in layers across the lawn, while the mingled scents of perfume and the clinking of glasses filled the air. Over half of Jiangqing's elite, from political dignitaries to business tycoons, had gathered here for one purpose: to attend the grand 18th birthday celebration of the Shin family's third young master, Shin Jinghan, by the floor-to-ceiling window on the second floor. Shin Jinghan held a crystal glass between his fingers. It wasn't vintage champagne inside, but ice-cold, sugar-free cola. His gaze lowered, looking down at the extravagant banquet laid out in his honor. His dark pupils held none of the youthful exuberance one might expect, only an unfathomable, icy stillness. Every pair of eyes below regarded him with a mix of awe, sycophancy, and envy. After all, he was the only male heir of the Shin family, the top elite in Jiangchong, and the undisputed future leader of the Shin group in the eyes of outsiders. At 15, he had spearheaded the acquisition of a nearly bankrupt gaming company, which now boasted a market value exceeding $30 billion. At 12, his proposal for the digital transformation of the department store sector not only multiplied the Shin Group's retail profits 12-fold, but also carved out a bloody path through the fiercely competitive e-commerce market. The entire Jiangqing addressed him as Third Young Master Shin, but only those within the core circle of the Shin Group knew that behind closed doors. They called him the living king of hell. Only Shin Jinghan himself knew that every calculated move and meticulous scheme over the past 18 years had been solely for survival. He did not belong to this world. 18 years ago, he had transmigrated into this world, before he could even take his first breath outside the womb. A cold, mechanical, electronic voice echoed in his mind, delivering a death sentence for his life. Ding. Host soul-binding successful. Welcome to the rich family's true and fake young master revenge survival system. Host identity confirmed. Fake young master of the Shin family, an imposter who has usurped another's place. Original plot loaded. Final outcome warning. On the host's 18th birthday, the true young master, who has endured 20 years of suffering at the bottom of society, will be brought back by the Shin family. The true young master, harboring extreme hatred toward the host due to a life of hardship, will launch a ruthless revenge, framing, alienating family ties, draining the family fortune, and cutting off all escape routes. In the end, the host will be utterly abandoned by the Shin family, his reputation ruined, and on a stormy night, he will be run over and killed by hired thugs under the true young master's orders, left to die on the streets with his body torn apart. System task. Before the true young master returns, accumulate sufficient strength, achieve a dramatic comeback, and change the fate of death. While still in the womb, Shin Jinghan's soul froze. In his previous life, he had been a top-tier investment banking tycoon on Wall Street, nicknamed the Lone Wolf, who, by the age of 30, controlled a hedge fund worth hundreds of billions of dollars, triggering 3 international financial crises. Ultimately, he was betrayed by his most trusted partner and plunged off a cliff in his car. To his death, he had thought that in this second life, he could follow the script of a top-tier aristocratic family, live comfortably as a spoiled, rich second-generation heir, and relax through the rest of his life. Instead, the game started with hellish difficulty, as the system predetermined his death 18 years later. No one could remain a carefree, rich Nepo baby after learning they were doomed to die violently on the streets. Shin Jinghan didn't believe in fate, only in the power and money in his hands. Since the system claimed he was just a doomed fake young master, he would turn the entire Shin family and Jiangqing into his impenetrable fortress before the true heir returned. Even if bloodlines determined titles, they would never shake the real power he wielded. Thus, from the day he became conscious, he began this 18-year-long scheme. While other infants were drinking milk and sleeping in their swaddling clothes, he was mentally reviewing financial cases from his past life, analyzing the Shin family's industrial structure, and predicting global economic trends for the next 2 decades. when other children were toddling and babbling. He could already point out financial loopholes in the reports his father, Shin Hongyuan, left in the study. At the age of 3, under the guise of childish innocence, he warned Shin Hongyuan to avoid an investment trap that could have severely damaged the Shin family. This feat earned him instant fame, making the entire Shin family realize that this third young master was born for the world of business. While other children were in elementary school, busy playing and doing homework, he had already used his memories from his past life to direct the son of a nanny, whom he had bribed with his milk money, to register over a dozen offshore companies overseas. He precisely caught every wave of opportunity in the internet, new energy, and artificial intelligence sectors, quietly completing his initial capital accumulation by the time he turned 12. The overseas assets under his control could already rival the entire Shin Group. Yet he never stepped into the spotlight. He understood the rules of this world all too well. Blood ties were the original sin. Even after 18 years in the Shin family, if his identity as the fake young master were exposed, Shin Hongyuan would never allow the family's trillion-dollar empire to fall into the hands of an outsider with no blood relation. He couldn't afford to become the target. Standing at the forefront of the storm, he needed a shield, someone who could rightfully stand at the forefront and take control of the Shin Group on his behalf. His gaze fell upon his eldest sister, Shensi. Shensi was 8 years his senior, the eldest daughter of the Shin family, gentle as water. She was a classic beauty of the Jiangnan region, with an innate passion for art that ran deep in her bones. By 16, she had earned a full scholarship to the École Nationale Supérieure de Beaux-Arts in Paris, and her oil paintings had won international awards. She was meant to be an artist who would spend her life in the company of brushes and pigments. But most importantly, she was an utterly hopeless little brother fanatic from childhood. Whenever Shin Jinghan slightly furrowed his brows, she would pluck the moon from the sky for him if she could. When he had a fever at 3 years old, she stayed by his bedside for 3 days and nights without sleep, tearfully saying she wished she could take his illness upon herself. When he was mocked by other wealthy heirs for being precocious and dull, she would immediately set down her paintbrush and rush to scold them until they were thoroughly humiliated. Heartbroken that he bore such heavy thoughts at such a young age, robbed of his childhood, she always blamed herself as his useless older sister for forcing him to worry about the family so early. This unreserved favoritism became the sharpest blade in Shin Jinghan's hands, and also the one tenderness he dared not confront directly in his 18 years. At the age of 9, Shin Jinghan took Shensi's hand for the first time. His young face lifted with calm determination, and said to her eldest sister, "I don't like standing in the spotlight, nor do I enjoy the scheming and intrigue. The Shin family needs a leader who can stabilize the situation. You're the most suitable. I'll always stand behind you and support you." At that time, Shensi had just received her acceptance letter from the Paris Academy of Fine Arts and had already packed her luggage. Seeing the rare dependence in her younger brother's eyes, she remained silent all night. The next day, she sent an email to the school, abandoning the dream she had pursued for over a decade. She stepped into the Shin Group, starting as a novice who couldn't even understand contract terms, and was ruthlessly forged into the decisive and eloquent general manager who could hold her own in boardroom debates. Outsiders praised the eldest daughter of the Shin family as the Iron Lady of the business world, swift, decisive, and ruthless. Only Shensi herself knew that behind every major contract she signed and every core project she finalized, there was Shin Jinghan's shadow. She was merely the spokesperson standing at the forefront, managing the overall situation on behalf of her brother. Using Shensi as his instrument, Shin Jinghan slowly eroded the power of the Shin Group like boiling a frog in warm water, one gradual step at a time. Today, over 90% of the board members of the Shin Group are his trusted allies, handpicked by him. The heads of all core departments within the group are his long-groomed confidants. Every financial transaction and project operation in the company is under his real-time surveillance. His father, Shin Hongyuan, chairman of the Shin Group, still sits in that position, but the resources he can mobilize are even less than those of Shensi's secretary. Long ago, He was reduced to a mere figurehead, needed only for ribbon-cutting ceremonies. Not only that, but he had also made thorough arrangements for the other sisters in the household long ago. Second sister, Shin Qingyan, 3 years his senior, had a cold and aloof temperament, speaking little, spending 20 out of 24 hours in the art studio. A genius oil painter, untouched by worldly affairs. According to the original plot of the system, this kind of outwardly cold but inwardly warm, simple-minded personality was most easily exploited by the White Lotus, true young master, becoming a sharp blade aimed at him. So Shin Jinghan used his resources to propel her onto the international art scene. Paintings under the pen name Cold Mountain fetched sky-high prices of over 10 million at auctions. He also sent her abroad for 3 years under the pretext of further studies, keeping her as far away from family disputes as possible and minimizing future contact with the true young master. The fourth sister, Shin Ningwan, was 15 that year, charming, lively, and the beloved of the Shin family. Her greatest hobbies were gossiping and playing video games. Still young, she posed little concern. The only thing Shin Jinghan did was deposit an endless supply of pocket money into her bank account, shielding her tightly and preventing her from encountering any dark sides of the business world. Over 18 years, he completely took control of the Shin family, from the core decision-making power of the group down to the security system of the ancestral home, firmly securing everything in his grasp. The security system of the old mansion was designed by a top international team he had hired, surpassing even the security level of a national treasury. Inside and outside the estate, his shadow guards, trained for over a decade, each a top-tier elite among retired special forces, were stationed. The offshore empire he controlled overseas boasted assets 3 times the size of the Shin Group. With just a flick of his finger, he could send shockwaves through Jiangxing's entire economy. His defensive tower had stacked up to 999 layers, holding a royal flush in his hand that could blow the entire Jiangxing sky high. For 18 years, he had sharpened his weapons and fed his horses, advancing step by step, all for this very day, waiting for that fated nemesis, the true young master destined to fight him to the death, to step into this manor. The moment he dared to show even a hint of his fangs, Shin Jinghan could instantly make him understand what it meant to face the harsh realities of society, what it meant to be stripped of everything, and what it meant to vanish without a trace. Jinghan, why are you hiding here all by yourself? A gentle female voice sounded from behind. Shensi, dressed in a moon-white haute couture evening gown, walked over holding 2 glasses of freshly squeezed juice. Though there was a trace of exhaustion in her eyes from having just dealt with the guests, the affection she directed at Shin Jinghan was almost overflowing. She handed him one of the glasses of juice and casually took the cola cup from his hand, sighing helplessly. How many times have I told you? Drink less soda. It's bad for your health. Those old folks downstairs were too persistent, wanting to toast you, but I fended them all off for you. Shin Jinghan took the juice. The cold ferocity on his face instantly faded as he revealed a perfectly measured, harmless smile, utterly different from the living demon who had just surveyed the entire room moments ago. Thank you, big sis. I'm fine. I just wanted some quiet time. You've always been deep in thought since you were little. Shensi sighed, reaching out to straighten his tie with fingers that carried a faint chill. Today is your 18th birthday. After today, you'll be an adult. Promise me. Don't push yourself so hard anymore. If the sky falls, your big sister will hold it up for you. Looking into her eyes brimming with unreserved sincerity, Shin Jinghan felt as though something had lightly pricked his heart, stirring a dense wave of guilt. Sis, I'm sorry I made you give up your dreams and stand in the spotlight, not to have you shield me from the storm, but simply to use you as my scapegoat. If one day she found out he wasn't her real brother, would she still treat him this well? Suppressing the turbulent emotions in his heart, he nodded with a smile, softening his voice slightly. All right, I'll listen to big sister. The banquet lasted until late into the night. As the taillights of the last luxury car vanished beyond the estate gates, the Shin family's ancestral home, bustling all day long, finally fell into complete silence. In the living room, the soft glow of the crystal chandelier spilled down. Shen Hongyuan sat in the host's seat, his face flushed, clearly having enjoyed himself thoroughly that day. Shenxi, Shen Qingyan, and Shen Ningguan were seated on the sofas on either side. Shen Jinghan also sat down, picking up the hot tea Shenxi had just brewed for him, his fingertips gently rubbing the warm surface of the cup. He knew the real show was about to begin. According to the original plot given by the system, in just 3 minutes, Shen Hongyuan would walk in with a travel-worn young man and drop the bombshell that would shake the entire Shen family. He set down the teacup and, under the pretense of adjusting his cuffs, lightly pressed the button on the miniature remote in his pocket. The hidden guards inside and outside the manor instantly entered a state of highest alert. The overseas financial team was already prepared to freeze any account at a moment's notice. The hacker team he had cultivated had already pinpointed all possible signal sources, ready to erase a person's existence at any moment. Shen Jinghan leaned forward slightly, his muscles tensed, a sharp glint of coldness flashing in his dark pupils as he stared intently toward the entrance. Master Shen, I've waited for you for 18 years. Let me see just what kind of monster you really are. Ahem. Shen Hongyuan, seated at the head of the table, cleared his throat, his smile gradually fading, replaced by an unprecedented seriousness and nervousness. He glanced around at his children present, took a deep breath, and began. Since everyone is here today, I have something very important to announce. Shen Jingyan's breathing slowed by half a beat, his mind already running through 18 years of contingency plans, all now poised and ready. At the entrance, a soft footstep echoed. Shen Hongyuan immediately stood up and hurried over, his movements carrying an unmistakable urgency and guilt. He reached out, gently taking the hand of the person at the door and leading them to the center of the living room. This child is Sun Yan. Shen Hongyuan's voice was clearly choked, his eyes red as he looked at the person beside him, his voice trembling. Yan Yan, come on. Say hello. Shen Jinghan had rehearsed in his mind for 18 years how to intimidate this impending enemy with an overwhelming aura of dominance, even preparing no fewer than 100 versions of opening lines. But when he clearly saw the person Shen Hongyuan led to the center of the living room, all the logical circuits in his brain short-circuited in an instant. He froze on the sofa, his fingertips going numb. Standing there was a slender young girl. She wore a faded white shirt, equally faded jeans, and canvas shoes speckled with dried mud. Her head was bowed, long hair obscuring most of her face, revealing only a delicate jawline. Her entire demeanor exuded a timid, uneasy nervousness, but when she raised her eyes to the luxurious decor of the living room, to these well-dressed people, a fleeting flash of amazement crossed her gaze, only to be quickly overshadowed by deep-seated inferiority. And beneath that inferiority, hidden in its darkest depths, was a trace of resentment so intense it seemed to spill over, as if the whole world owed her something. The resentment was justified. The suffering endured at the bottom was justified. The unease and the ingrained stubbornness were also justified. But the problem was, this is a woman. Where's the real young master I've waited 18 years for? Where's the cunning, treacherous young master who hired someone to run me over on a rainy night, who needed me to sideline my own father, drive my eldest sister mad, and who's been plotting against me for 18 years? Why is it a girl? That? Who is this? That? Shen Ningguan widened her eyes, breaking the silence in the living room, and asked curiously. Shenxi's brows instantly furrowed. Years of sharp instincts honed in the business world made her instinctively sense a strong wave of crisis. She subconsciously straightened her posture slightly, her gaze toward the girl now tinged with wariness. Sitting at the very edge, Shen Qingyan remained her usual aloof self, her fingertips lightly tracing the rim of her water glass, as if everything happening in the living room had absolutely nothing to do with her. Shen Hongyuan took a deep breath, looked at his 4 children, and said in a trembling voice, word by word, Qingyan, Jinghan, Ningguan, she is the true child of the Shen family. 21 years ago at the city center hospital, when Qingyan was just born, she and Yanyan were accidentally switched. Boom! Like a thunderbolt from the heavens. It struck straight down on Shen Jinghan's crown, splitting him inside and out, his very soul trembling. The one who was mistaken was Qin Yan, that quiet, reserved, unassuming second sister, Shen Qinyan, whom he had sent abroad for 3 years to stay away from conflicts. Was she the impostor who had usurped another's place? And this girl named Sun Yan was actually the genuine second daughter of the Shen family. Then who am I? Shen Jinghan sat on the sofa, completely stunned. He had been planning since infancy, rising early and retiring late, exhausting his heart and mind, stopping at nothing to sideline his own father, push his gentle eldest sister into becoming a business queen, spend countless resources to send his second sister away, protect his youngest sister, and lay out an elaborate scheme for 18 whole years, all in preparation for a life-and-death struggle with the true heir. His enemy, from beginning to end, never actually existed. The real young master in the original plot, from start to finish, was just a piece of misinformation. System, damn you. System, get out here. What the hell is going on? Shen Jinghan roared frantically in his mind, nearly unleashing all 18 years of suppressed frustration just as his composure was completely shattered and he was on the verge of vomiting blood. The system that had accompanied him for 18 years, usually pretending to be dead or slacking off, finally stirred. But this time, the cold, mechanical, electronic voice carried a visible hint of panic and bewilderment. What the hell? This isn't right. Host, you're supposed to be the fake young master. What's going on? The script is wrong. Shen Jinghan let out a cold, mocking laugh. You're asking me what's going on? I was about to ask you the same thing. I don't know either. I'm the true and false young master revenge survival system from the male-oriented channel bureau. I was supposed to be bound to the fake young master protagonist in a male-oriented fake young master story. I even prepared the entire cultivation comeback script for you. Cultivate your damn immortal. Does the system even have male and female channels? System emergency self-check in progress. Re-verifying original plotline. Cross-dimensional signal interference. Underlying code logic error. Identity re-verification in progress. Host Shen Jinghan. DNA match with Shun Hongyuan. 99.99% confirmed. You are the biological child of Shun Hongyuan and his deceased wife, the genuine third young master of the Shen family, the sole male heir, original plot target, the true young master who harbored resentment due to being switched at birth and sought revenge against the host, does not exist due to system-binding error. The original antagonist's gender was misassigned, now corrected to true heir Sun Yan, counterpart to second Miss Shen Qinyan. With no plot conflicts against the host, this system's core function is counterattack and revenge of the true and false young masters. Given that the host is already the true young master of the Shen family and has prematurely achieved the ultimate objectives of gaining absolute control over family power, establishing a business empire, and facing no survival threats, this system is no longer necessary. System unbinding imminent. Unbinding procedure initiated. Wishing the host a pleasant life. Goodbye. No, never see you again. After a burst of crackling static, the electronic voice that had accompanied him for 18 years in his mind completely vanished. That damn system, which had screwed him over for a full 18 years, disappeared just as it had arrived, without a trace, like a thief in the night, packing up and running away. It ran away. Only Shen Jinghan remained, sitting alone on the luxurious leather sofa, watching Shen Hongyuan and Sun Yan sobbing uncontrollably in the living room, observing the shocked expression of his eldest sister Shensi, the still expressionless face of Shen Qinyan, and the gossip-filled eyes of Shen Ningwan. The Shen Jinghan, the genuine young master of the Shen family, the actual controller of the Shen group, the sole master of a trillion-dollar overseas business empire, had spent 18 years outsmarting thin air. He had even completely sidelined his own father. What kind of human tragedy is this? 3 days after the system vanished, Shen Jinghan suffered from insomnia for 3 consecutive nights. As soon as he closed his eyes, scenes from the past 18 years replayed in his mind, himself at 3 years old, clutching financial reports and gnawing on them, Himself at 9, persuading his elder sister to abandon her dreams. Himself at 12, debating fiercely with board members in a boardroom. Himself at 15, forcing his own father to hand over real power. And himself 3 days ago, struck by lightning in the living room, his brain crashing, and the deafening words the system had shouted before leaving. I'm a male-oriented system. You know what? Shin Jinghan lay on his 2-meter-wide black sandalwood bed in his bedroom, staring at the crystal chandelier on the ceiling. His toes were so awkward they could dig out a Versailles palace, complete with 18 basements and 300 security booths. On the multi-million-dollar handmade carpet, he had lived 2 lifetimes, totaling nearly 50 years, and never had he experienced such a mortifying moment. In his past life on Wall Street, he had dazzled hundreds of top global investors with his pitch for a $100 billion merger deal without batting an eye. In this lifetime at Shin Corporation, he had overturned the entire power structure of the group in front of a room of shrewd board members, his expression never changing. But now, the mere thought of facing his own father, whom he had sidelined for years, over breakfast tomorrow, and confronting his elder sister, whom he had personally pushed into becoming a ruthless businesswoman, made him wish he could vanish into thin air. What devastated him even more was that his 18-year-long scheme had already penetrated every aspect of the Shin family and every corner of Jiangqing. There was simply no way to take it back. Now, here was the simplest example. As the chairman of the Shin Group, Shin Hongyuan now needed approval from the general manager's office for any fund transfer exceeding 1 million yuan. And all approval processes in the general manager's office ultimately required authorization from Shin Jinghan. In other words, even if his own father wanted to buy himself a nicer watch now, he needed his son's permission. Then there was the security system at the old mansion. Back then, to guard against the real young master's potential assassination attempts or poisonings, he had upgraded the security system of the old mansion no less than 20 times. Now, every corner of the house, except the bedrooms and bathrooms, was under his surveillance. All ingredients had to pass 3 rounds of security checks before entering the kitchen. And every servant was a trusted confidant whose background he had vetted for 3 generations and trained for over a decade. Now, with the enemy he was guarding against gone, the entire system was being used to monitor his own family. Shin Jinghan covered his face and let out a stifled groan. What a cursed mess. He had to figure out what was really going on. Why did the script given by the system completely differ from reality? Why did a male-oriented true and false young master story turn into a female-oriented true and false heir story? Shin Jinghan sat up from the bed, picked up his phone, and dialed an encrypted number. The phone was answered after just 1 ring, and a respectful male voice came through. "Boss, find someone for me," Shin Jinghan said, his voice carrying a hint of hoarseness from lack of sleep, along with a trace of barely concealed irritation. "Sun Yen, I want every detail about her from birth to now, no matter how trivial. Her 3rd grade test scores, which factory she worked at, how many relationships she's had. Dig up everything. Half a day. Is that enough?" "Got it, boss. The documents will be delivered to your study within half an hour." The person on the other end responded without hesitation. After hanging up the phone, Shin Jinghan got up and walked into the bathroom. The young man in the mirror stood tall and straight, his handsome features sharp to the point of severity. His dark pupils held a trace of lingering exhaustion and a hint of unvanquished ferocity. 18 years of high-pressure living had left him exuding an icy aloofness that kept others at bay. Even now, with his composure shattered, the commanding aura of someone long accustomed to authority remained unmistakable. He splashed cold water on his face, forcing himself to calm down. At this point, falling apart wouldn't help anything. At least he was the Shin family's biological son, not some imposter who had stolen another's nest. At least he no longer had to worry about being run over and killed in the rain 18 years later. No longer had to live every day counting down to his death. At least the power and money he held in his hands were real. Thinking about it this way, maybe it wasn't such a bad deal after all. Shin Jinghan looked at his reflection in the mirror, then recalled how he had been striving since the age of 3. working hard for 18 years, only to find he had been going in the wrong direction. His heart nearly gave out again on the spot. Half an hour later, the butler knocked on the study door and brought in a thick manila envelope. "Young master, the information you requested. Leave it here." Shin Jinghan, seated behind the expansive ebony desk, waved his hand dismissively. After the butler withdrew, he opened the file folder. The contents were as thick as a dictionary, meticulously documenting every detail of Sun Yan's life over the past 21 years. Shin Jinghan flipped through the pages one by one, his frown deepening with each turn. By the end, he let out a bitter laugh, utterly exasperated at that damn system. Even though it had bound the wrong host and gotten the gender wrong, the plot outline hadn't collapsed at all. Sun Yan's life trajectory perfectly matched the description the system had given him of the true young master who suffered immensely at the bottom of society and developed extreme hatred toward wealthy family life. Except for the gender discrepancy, every single detail aligned flawlessly. Sun Yan's adoptive parents, who were also Shun Qingyan's biological parents, were an ordinary couple from a county in the suburbs of Jiangqing, with a deep-seated preference for sons over daughters ingrained in their bones. From a young age, Sun Yan never had enough to eat or wear. Starting at the age of 5, she had to take on all the household chores, washing clothes, cooking, feeding pigs, and farming, doing every kind of labor. After graduating from elementary school, she was forced by her adoptive parents to drop out and work in a factory. Every penny she earned was taken by them to support their own idol, a good-for-nothing biological son. The slightest resistance was met with beatings or scolding. At 18, her adoptive parents, desperate to raise dowry money for their son, nearly sold her to a crippled man in his 30s. She fled that night, working odd jobs outside, sleeping under bridges, going hungry, and enduring abuse. In that swamp-like existence, she struggled to survive for 3 long years. Shin Jinghan glanced at the records, his fingertips lightly tapping the table. If it were him having struggled in such an environment for 21 years, and then one day someone told him he was actually a child of the top-tier elite, someone who should have lived in a large villa, driven luxury cars, and been pampered all his life, while all the suffering he had endured was meant for someone else, he would hate, too. If this were in a female-oriented novel, it would be the perfect setup for a dark revenge story starring a badass female protagonist. Fortunately, although the Shin family were capitalists, they weren't heartless monsters. Shin Hongyuan handled the matter decisively. He directly paid a hefty sum to Sun Yan's parasitic adoptive parents, signing a complete severance agreement to cut off all their hopes. He then brought Sun Yan back to the Shin family, restored her original surname to Shin, and added her to the family registry. The only complication was that Sun Yan had used her adopted name for 21 years and couldn't adjust to the change immediately, so she still went by Sun Yan. As for the mistakenly switched, fake, heiress, Shin Qingyan, Shun Hongyuan and Shenxi's stance was very clear. After all, they had raised her for 21 years, and their feelings were genuine. The Shin family was wealthy and influential, and one more mouth to feed made no difference. She would remain the second young lady of the Shin family with no change from before. And Shin Qingyan's own reaction was even more extraordinary. On the day she learned she wasn't biologically related to the Shin family, she merely responded with a cold, then calmly said, "If you need me to move out, please notify me 3 days in advance so I can pack my painting supplies." With that, she turned and went back to her studio to continue painting. As if the sky were falling, nothing mattered as much as whether her paint had dried or not. Shin Jinghan glanced at the section on Shin Qingyan in the file, unable to help but rub his brow. He had guarded against her for 3 years, fearing she'd be used by the real young master. But it turned out she didn't care about the Shin family's fortune at all, not even about her own origins. So for 18 years, he'd been the only one performing a one-man show here, staging a spy drama with no audience. Shin Jinghan threw the documents onto the table, leaned back in his chair, and let out a long sigh of relief. It all made sense now. Everything finally made sense. He was their biological child. The Shin family's assets were rightfully his from the start. There was no need to guard against anyone trying to snatch them away. No more round-the-clock workdays. No more studying overseas mergers and acquisitions. No more obsessing over NASDAQ indices. No more scheming against people's intentions. No more setting up those pointless traps. He was going to embrace the slacker life. He was going to replace the cola in his champagne flute with real ice-cold champagne. He wanted to play games. He wanted to race cars. He wanted to travel the world. He was going to make up for the extravagant life of a spoiled, rich second-generation heir that he had missed out on for 18 years. Every single moment of it. Thinking of this, Shin Jinghan instantly perked up and grabbed his phone, quickly dialing his elder sister Shenxi's number. The phone rang twice before being answered. A gentle voice coming through the line. Shenxi, with the sound of keyboard typing in the background. Clearly still at work in the office. Jinghan, what's wrong? Did something happen at home? Sister, nothing's wrong, Shin Jinghan said, lying on his bed with a deep, almost world-weary tone. I just thought about it carefully. I'm only 18. Life should have more possibilities. I can't keep trapping myself in work forever. The sound of keyboard typing on the other end of the phone stopped. Shenxi's voice carried a hint of tension. What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? I'll come back right away. No, sis, I'm perfectly fine. Shin Jinghan quickly stopped her, cleared his throat, and continued. What I mean is, for the next 6 months, I want you to take full responsibility for all the meetings, project proposals in the group, and especially the upcoming bidding for the Southern New Energy Industrial Park. I want to take a break, give myself some time off. On the other end of the line, there was a silence that lasted half a minute. Shin Jinghan could even hear Shenxi's breathing, and he felt a bit guilty inside. He knew that Shenxi would never scold him for lacking ambition. She would only think he was following her advice to get some proper rest. But he hadn't expected Shenxi's next reaction to completely surpass his expectations. Half a minute later, Shenxi's voice dropped to an extremely low pitch, brimming with the excitement of someone orchestrating a plan and a hint of realization. Jinghan, have you noticed something? Shin Jinghan. Is it those old bastards in the group taking advantage of the recent family troubles to meddle with the Southern District project? Shenxi's voice carried a hint of ruthlessness. I knew it. Those old fools wouldn't stay quiet. Ever since you kicked them out of their core positions, they've been holding a grudge. You're retreating in order to advance, deliberately relinquishing power to lure the snake out of its hole and give them a thorough purge. Am I right? Shin Jinghan held the phone, his entire body frozen stiff. No, sis, your imagination is way too vivid. It's a waste of talent not to write mystery novels. The fake heiress isn't the fake heir. As long as the man in power remains unharmed, even if the family is in complete chaos, it won't shake the foundation of the Shin Corporation. Those old foxes had their fangs pulled out long ago. They can't stir up any trouble now. Sis, no, I really just wanted to play games, wanted to slack off. I get it. Shenxi cut him off decisively, her tone resolute. The greatest seclusion is in the city. Pretend to be sick and weak to lull the enemy into complacency. Leave it to me for the next few months. You focus on your disguise and rest well. I'll shield you from all the storms outside. I guarantee I'll root out all those demons and monsters. Not a single one will escape. The call ended abruptly. Shin Jinghan listened to the dial tone from his phone, wearily rubbed his temples, and slowly collapsed onto the bed. Wait, that's not right. Where did my gentle and sensible elder sister, who wouldn't even step on an ant, go? How out of character is this? It was all because of what he had forced her to become. Shin Jinghan closed his eyes in despair. Just perish already. Fortunately, Shenxi had been thoroughly trained by him by now, her methods ruthlessly sharp, fully capable of holding her own. As for how she chose to interpret things, he'd let her be. How could he possibly tell his elder sister? I forced you into the company before because I thought I was the fake young master and wanted you as my shield. But now I've found out I'm the real one. So I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to slack off. If he did, it wouldn't just be social suicide. It would be a full-blown social cremation. Shen Jinghan had thought that he could finally begin his long-overdue life as a spoiled rich second-generation heir. 18 years late, but he soon realized he was wrong. The tree desires stillness, but the wind will not cease. Sun Yan's revenge had finally arrived. Although, due to the system's colossal blunder, the target of her revenge had shifted from him, the non-existent fake young master, to Shen Qingyan, the real but fake heiress. He was inevitably dragged into this low-level domestic feud as a bystander under the same roof, unable to escape no matter how hard he tried. It was Sun Yan's 5th day back at the Shen family. Dinner time found the family seated around the long French-style dining table. Shenxi was absent, having gone to the company to handle the Southern District New Energy project. In her imagination, she was helping Shen Jinghan lure the snake out of its hole. The housekeeper had already prepared a lavish dinner spread, a perfect blend of Chinese and Western dishes, appealing in color, aroma, and taste. But just as the dishes were all laid out, Sun Yan stood up and walked in, carrying a large clay pot, wearing a timid smile on her face. "Dad, sisters, little brother." Her voice was soft, tinged with a hint of nervousness. "I don't have much to repay you all, so I made a pot of spare rib soup. My specialty. Thank you for accepting me." As she spoke, she placed the clay pot in the center of the dining table and reached out to lift the lid. At that very moment, Shen Jingyan's brows furrowed instantly. He sensed something was amiss. First, Sun Yan was wearing an obviously oversized old t-shirt with the cuffs frayed from washing. Clearly, Shenxi had already prepared a whole wardrobe of haute couture clothes and designer bags for her in the walk-in closet, each piece starting at 5 figures. Yet she deliberately dressed like this to create a pitiful image that clashed with the household. Second, when she carried the clay pot in, she deliberately avoided holding the handle, clearly afraid of getting burned. But when she lifted the lid, she intentionally touched the scalding edge of the pot, her movements extremely deliberate. Third, and most importantly, back then, Shen Jinghan had installed the most advanced substance detector in the dining room of the old mansion to guard against the real young master's potential poisoning attempts. The alarm would trigger immediately upon detecting any harmful substances. The moment Sun Yan placed the clay pot on the table, a faint vibration came from the watch on his wrist. The rib soup in the clay pot had tested positive for laxatives. The dosage wasn't large enough to harm the body, but it was sufficient to keep someone running to the bathroom for a whole day. Shen Jingyan's lips twitched. "Big sister, take a look. All those business conspiracies and boardroom power struggles you imagined are completely false. The real crisis is that the younger sister you just found has added laxatives to the dinner soup. Planning to frame your other sister. Is this all he's been scheming for 18 years? Guarding against tactics of this level?" Shen Jinghan was practically laughing in anger. Sure enough, the moment Sun Yan lifted the lid of the clay pot, she let out an ouch, as if scalded, jerking her hand back abruptly. The lid flew straight out of her grip and landed squarely on the plate in front of Shen Qingyan. The scalding soup splashed all over Shen Qingyan, instantly staining her white shirt with a large patch of grease. The entire dining room fell silent in an instant. Sun Yan's eyes reddened immediately, tears streaming down her face as she stood there in a panic. Apologizing in a choked voice, I'm sorry, second sister. I didn't mean to. My hand got burned and I couldn't hold it steady." As she spoke, she deliberately extended her fingers to show everyone. The tips were indeed red and swollen. Shen Hongyuan frowned, about to say something, when he saw Sun Yan tearfully looking at Shen Qingyan, her tone utterly humble. "Second sister, please don't be angry with me. Okay, I know I'm clumsy. I shouldn't have been here. Shouldn't have caused trouble for everyone. I'll pack my things and leave now." This series of moves flowed seamlessly. First, she played the weakling, then exaggerated her misery, and finally positioned herself as the victim, putting Shen Qingyan in a tight spot. The moment Shen Qingyan showed even the slightest dissatisfaction, she would be labeled as bullying the newly found biological sister. Relying on having been raised for over 20 years, Shen Jinghan sat there, chopsticks in hand, watching the farce unfold with an expressionless face. He had finally figured it out. apart from the gender being wrong. The script given by the system hadn't changed a bit. Sun Yan's tactics were exactly the same as those of the real young master described by the system. Full of this kind of white lotus, playing the victim, fishing for sympathy, and sowing discord. Too bad she had picked the wrong opponent. Shin Qingyan sat there, her clothes stained with oil, yet she didn't even furrow her brows. She set down her knife and fork, picked up a napkin, and leisurely wiped the soup from her hands before lifting her gaze to the sobbing Sun Yan. Her eyes were cool and unruffled, devoid of any emotion. First, you were the one who insisted on making the soup. You were the one who lifted the lid. And you were the one who burned your hand. It's your own fault. There's no need to apologize to me. Second, if my clothes are dirty, I can wash them myself or throw them away. It's no big deal. I'm not angry, so you don't need to cry. Third, this is your own home. No one is making you leave. If you want to stay, then stay properly. There's no need to keep talking about leaving all the time. 3 sentences, spoken unhurriedly with a cool tone, completely shut down Sun Yan's attempt to play the victim. Sun Yan's sobs abruptly caught in her throat, leaving her frozen in place, tears hanging, her face unable to cry or stop crying, so embarrassed she could dig out a 3-bedroom apartment with her fingers. Shin Hongyuan also sighed in relief and quickly mediated. All right, as long as everyone's fine. Nian didn't mean it. Let's all sit down and eat. Qingyan, go upstairs and change your clothes so you don't catch a cold. Shin Qingyan nodded, stood up, and without even glancing at Sun Yan again, turned and went upstairs. A meticulously planned farce came to such a light, anticlimactic end. Sun Yan stood there, her fingers tightly clutching the hem of her clothes, a fleeting trace of venom flashing in her eyes, so quick it was almost imperceptible. Shin Jinghan observed it all with complete indifference, even feeling somewhat amused. Is this all the trickery you've got? For 18 years, he had guarded against countless poisonings, assassinations, and framed conspiracies, and this was it. He couldn't even be bothered to expose the laxative in the soup. No need. This level of petty domestic scheming was no different from children playing house in his eyes. He just wanted to eat his meal in peace, then return to his room to play games and start his slacker life. But he never expected that this farce was only the beginning. His path to slacking off was destined to be blocked, because early the next morning, he received a call from the shadow guards saying that Sun Yan had secretly met someone at dawn. That person was the chairman of the Qin group, Qin Feng. Upon hearing this name, the laziness in Shin Jingyan's eyes instantly faded, replaced by a flash of bone-chilling coldness. Qin Feng had been his long-standing business rival for years. The Qin group and the Shin group had been locked in a fierce battle in Jiangqing for over a decade, competing across industries from real estate to new energy, retail to the internet. Everywhere was a battlefield. Qin Feng was a cunning and treacherous man who would stop at nothing to win. Back when Shin Jinghan had led the acquisition of that gaming company, Qin Feng had pulled countless underhanded tricks behind the scenes. In the end, Shin Jinghan had turned the tables on him, causing Qin Feng to lose billions and leaving him harboring deep resentment ever since. Has Sun Yan been back in the Shin family for only 5 days, and she's already hooked up with Qin Feng? Shin Jinghan sat in the study, lightly tapping the desk with his fingertips, a cold smile curling at the corners of his mouth. I originally wanted to slack off and let you off, but you came knocking on my door yourselves, daring to mess with me. Do you really think my 18 years of planning were just for fun? The appearance of Qin Feng completely snapped Shin Jinghan out of his slacking mindset. He could ignore the domestic strife between Sun Yan and Shin Qingyan, allowing the drama of the real and fake heiresses to unfold along its original course. But he absolutely could not tolerate someone using the Shin family's internal affairs to reach into the Shin Corporation, into his territory, especially when that someone was Qin Feng. Boss, here's the surveillance footage from Sun Yan and Qin Feng's meeting this morning, along with their call recordings. A shadow guard placed a tablet in front of Shin Jinghan. Surveillance footage was playing on the screen. Sun Yan met with Qin Feng in a private room at a cafe, and the two talked for nearly an hour. Shin Jinghan tapped open the call recording, and Qin Feng's seductive voice came through clearly. Nian, you need to think carefully. No one in the Shin family truly cares about you. Shin Hongyuan only feels guilty toward you. Shensi protects that Shin Qingyan. And Shin Jinghan is an even more ruthless figure who holds all the real power in the Shin family. You simply don't have a foothold in this household. What they're giving you now is just a pittance. Once the storm blows over, they'll still side with Shin Qingyan, whom they've raised for over 20 years. You'll get nothing after suffering for 21 years. Do you really just want to settle for such scraps? I can help you. I'll help you secure shares in the Shin family, help you establish yourself in the Shin Corporation, and help you reclaim everything that rightfully belongs to you. Our goals align. I want the Shin Corporation to fall, and you want what you deserve. If we work together, it's a win-win. In the recording, Sun Yan's voice carried a hint of hesitation and resentment. Why would you help me? You're a sworn enemy of the Shin family. Why should I trust you? Because we share a common enemy. Qin Feng chuckled. Shin Jinghan ruined me. I've long wanted him to pay the price. Don't worry. I only want the Shin Corporation's market share. The Shin family's assets are all yours. I can even help you drive Shin Qingyan out of the family and make her taste the suffering you endured. The subsequent content was nothing more than Qin Feng gradually painting a rosy picture for Sun Yan, teaching her how to sow discord within the Shin family, how to gain Shin Hongyuan's trust, how to secretly obtain internal documents of the Shin group, and how to gradually erode the Shin family's power. As for Sun Yan, she went from initial hesitation to being completely persuaded in the end, agreeing to collaborate with Qin Feng. After the recording finished playing, Shin Jinghan expressionlessly pressed the pause button, his eyes devoid of any emotion, only a fathomless coldness. He should have thought of it long ago. Sun Yan, a girl who had struggled at the bottom for 21 years, couldn't possibly have mastered so many divisive tactics right after returning to the Shin family. Even if she harbored resentment, her schemes, seemingly flawless, actually bore Qin Feng's fingerprints everywhere. Qin Feng was trying to dismantle the Shin family from within. He knew that, on the surface, he stood no chance against Shin Jinghan or the current Shin Corporation, so he could only use Sun Yan as a pawn to stir up internal chaos within the Shin family, making them falter so he could exploit the situation. Unfortunately, he chose the wrong pawn and underestimated Shin Jinghan. He thought Shin Jinghan would be overwhelmed by family matters. But little did he know that this farce of the real and fake heiresses was nothing more than an amusing pastime for Shin Jinghan. Even less did he realize that the cards Shin Jinghan held were far more numerous than he could ever imagine. Boss, should we take action? The shadow guard asked respectfully. Just say the word, and we can make Qin Feng pay the price. Not yet. Shin Jinghan waved his hand, a playful smile curling at the corners of his lips. Let's not rush it. Since Qin Feng wants to play, I'll indulge him properly. Isn't he trying to use Sun Yan as his pawn? Then I'll turn that pawn into a knife, one that pierces straight through his heart. Keep watching them. Record every call, every meeting, every move they make, down to the last detail. I need to know exactly what Qin Feng is up to and what his trump card is. Yes, boss. After the shadow guard left, the study fell silent once more. Shin Jinghan leaned back in his chair, fingertips lightly stroking his chin as his mind raced. The appearance of Qin Feng suddenly made him realize something. For these past 18 years, he had been immersed in the script provided by the system, fixated on that non-existent true young master while overlooking many people and things around him. He thought he had everything under control, but in reality, he knew far too little about his own family and this Shin household. He believed Shin Hongyuan was just a powerless figurehead. But how could someone who had built the Shin Empire from scratch into a trillion-dollar enterprise truly be so incompetent? He thought Shensi was just a puppet he could push forward. But how could someone who had transformed from an art student into a decisive business queen in just a few years truly be nothing more than a naive sweetheart who only listened to her younger brother? He thought Shin Qingyan was an unworldly painter. But how could someone who remained so calm and composed after learning they weren't biologically related truly be so indifferent and desireless? He thought Shen Ningguan was just a charming little girl who loved gossip. But could someone who lived carefree under the watchful eyes of a living demon like him really be just an ordinary young girl? 18 years of scheming, and he had trapped himself in the script given by the system, seeing only what he wanted to see. Now that the system was gone and the script was gone, it was time for him to take a good look at this home he'd guarded for 18 years and uncover the secrets hidden within. The first person he needed to find was his own father, Shen Hongyuan. In the afternoon, Shen Hongyuan had just returned from the golf course, changed into casual clothes, and was sitting in the tea room of the living room, brewing tea. Seeing Shen Jinghan approach, he paused for a moment before smiling and waving. "Jinghan, come have a cup of tea with your dad." Shen Jinghan walked over and sat down across from him. The butler poured a cup of tea for Shen Jinghan and then withdrew, leaving only the father and son in the tea room. Shen Hongyuan picked up his teacup, took a sip, and looked at Shen Jinghan with a smile. "What's the matter? Found time to have tea with me today? Not busy at the company anymore? Or is there a new project you need to report to your old man about?" His tone was casual, laced with a hint of teasing, as if he didn't mind at all that his son had been sidelining him. Shen Jinghan looked at him, silent for a few seconds, then cut straight to the point. "Dad, you've known all along that I've been sidelining you, haven't you?" With a single sentence, the air in the tea room instantly fell silent. Shen Hongyuan's hand, holding the teacup, paused for a moment before he lifted his gaze to Shen Jinghan. The smile on his face gradually faded, yet there was not a trace of surprise, as if he had long been waiting for this question. He set down the teacup, looked at Shen Jinghan, and nodded calmly. "Yes, I've known for a long time." Shen Jinghan's heart clenched violently, although he had long been mentally prepared. Hearing Shen Hongyuan admit it in person still made his heart ache uncontrollably. All his painstaking efforts to gradually erode power and sideline his own father had been seen through from the start, with the other party even playing along in this charade. The level of social embarrassment just doubled. "I knew it from the time you were 12. Shen Hongyuan looked at him with a complex gaze. There was pride, guilt, and a trace of barely perceptible heartache. As expected of Shen Hongyuan's son. "You were born for this. Then why?" Shen Jinghan's throat tightened slightly. "Why didn't you stop me? Why did you just stand by and watch as I took away your real power bit by bit, reducing you to a mere figurehead?" Shen Hongyuan smiled, picked up the teapot, and refilled Shen Jinghan's cup before saying slowly, "Because I'm tired. The Shen Corporation is the empire I built with my own hands. When I was young, I worked day and night to make money and expand the business. I neglected your mother and all of you kids. Your mother passed away early. Before she left, she told me her greatest wish in life was for all of you to grow up safely and happily, without being trapped in the business world like me, entangled in endless scheming and power struggles. But I failed." Shen Hongyuan's voice carried a hint of guilt. "After your mother passed, I became even busier and had no time to look after you. It wasn't until I realized that my 3-year-old son could actually understand financial reports and point out flaws in my investment plans. I was shocked at first, then heartbroken. Jinghan, you were only 3 years old, while other children were still cuddling in their parents' arms. You were already pondering such things. Even then, I knew this child carried too much on his mind, lacking a sense of security. If you want authority, real power, to firmly grasp the Shen family in your hands, then it's yours. As your father, I couldn't give you enough security, so I'll give you enough power to set your mind at ease. Moreover, you've done far better than I ever could." Shen Hongyuan looked at Shen Jinghan with eyes full of pride. "In these past few years, under your leadership, the Shen Corporation has tripled in scale and quintupled in market value. You've achieved things I wouldn't have dared to dream of in my time. As the chairman, being a mere figurehead and enjoying the leisure, what's not to like?" Shen Jinghan sat there, completely frozen. He had never imagined that the truth would turn out to be like this. He thought he was a treacherous usurper, only to find out that the emperor had long intended to abdicate and had even paved the way for him behind the scenes. His 18 years of caution and meticulous planning were nothing more than child's play in his father's eyes. "There's one more thing I need to be honest with you about." Shen Hongyuan looked at him and continued about the mix-up between Qingyan and Nianyan. I didn't just find out now. I've known for 3 years. Boom! Another bolt of lightning struck Shen Jinghan on the head. You knew 3 years ago. Shen Jinghan suddenly raised his head, staring at Shen Hongyuan with shock in his eyes. Then why didn't you say anything? Why wait until now? Because Qingyan is too sensitive. Shen Hongyuan sighed, his tone full of helplessness. Though she appears cold, she cares more about this family than anyone else. If I had told her earlier, she would have felt like an outsider and left the Shen family. She's the daughter I've raised for 21 years. Even without blood ties, she's still my daughter. I've been waiting for Nianyan to be willing to come back. Waiting until I could handle everything properly. To arrange secure futures for both children before bringing this up. I didn't want to hurt either of them. Shen Jinghan was utterly speechless. He had always believed himself to be the most calculating person in this family. Yet in the end, it turned out he was the one kept in the dark. His biological father had known everything all along, yet played along with him in this act for 18 years. Dad, I'm sorry. Shen Jinghan looked at Shen Hongyuan, his throat tight, finally offering this apology that was 18 years overdue. For 18 years, he had schemed against his own father over a non-existent threat. Yet this man had been silently tolerating and protecting him in his own way all along. Silly child, why apologize to your dad? Shen Hongyuan smiled, patting his shoulder. You're my son. The Shen family's legacy was always meant to be yours. You've done well. I'm very proud. As for the past, what's done is done. Dad knows you must have your own reasons. And if you don't want to talk about it, I won't ask. From now on, you don't have to live so burdened. With me here, with your sisters here, even if the sky falls, we'll hold it up for you. When Shen Jinghan stepped out of the tea room, his mind was still in a daze. 18 years of obsession, 18 years of vigilance, 18 years of careful planning. In this moment, it all seemed like a joke. Yet in his heart, there was no trace of anger, only an indescribable warmth that slowly welled up inside him. He had always thought he was alone, fighting against fate. Little did he know, his family had always been standing behind him, accompanying and protecting him. Just as he reached the stairwell, he ran into Shensi coming down from upstairs. Shensi had just returned from the company, still dressed in her professional suit and holding a folder. Seeing Shen Jinghan, she immediately walked over with a smile. Jinghan, you're done talking with Dad. Perfect timing. Let me tell you, those old foxes at the company couldn't hold back after all. They secretly contacted Qin Feng behind our backs, trying to meddle with the Southern District project. But I caught them red-handed. Your tactic of luring the snake out of its hole is absolutely brilliant. I've already suspended all of them, and all the relevant evidence has been compiled. Would you like to take a look? Shen Jinghan looked at the sparkle in her eyes, at the faint dark circles beneath them, and a wave of guilt surged in his heart. He grabbed Shensi's hand, looked at her intently, and said earnestly, Sis, I'm sorry. Shensi was taken aback, the smile vanishing from her face in an instant as she looked at him nervously. What's wrong? Jinghan, did something happen? Who bullied you? Tell me. No one bullied me. Shen Jinghan shook his head, looking at her as he spoke word by word. Sis, I'm sorry. Back then, it was me who deceived you, made you give up your dreams and enter the corporation to shield me from the front. Enduring so much hardship, what I told you back then, that I didn't like standing in front of others, was all a lie. I just wanted you to be my shield to help me seize control of the Shen family's power. I'm sorry, sis. Finally, he uttered the apology he had kept buried in his heart for 18 years. He thought Shensi would be angry, shocked, or disappointed, but he didn't expect that after hearing this. Shensi just froze for a moment before smiling and gently ruffling his hair with a tenderness that was almost overwhelming. Silly little brother, did you really think your sister didn't know? Shensi gazed at him, her eyes brimming with affection. How could I not know what kind of person my little brother is? You've always been deep in thought, keeping everything to yourself, terrified inside yet pretending to be fearless. I know you must have encountered something that made you feel insecure. wanting to hold on to something. If you want your sister to help you, then I will. So what if it means giving up painting? So what if it means joining the corporation to learn business? As long as it brings my little brother peace of mind, your sister is willing to do anything. Do you really think those proposals you gave me would be enough to secure my position in the boardroom? Shensi smiled, a hint of cunning flashing in her eyes. Those old foxes are all shrewd and calculating. If it weren't for your sister behind the scenes, smoothing out the overt and covert attacks, clearing away those who opposed you one by one, do you think your proposals would have passed so smoothly? Jinghan, your sister isn't your puppet. She's your support. That was true in the past. It's true now, and it will always be true. Shin Jinghan stood there looking at his elder sister before him, his nose tingling with emotion, and his eyes reddened in an instant. For nearly 50 years combined across 2 lifetimes, he had never cried, not even when betrayed by his business partner and driven off a cliff in his previous life had he shed a single tear. Yet, at this moment, he couldn't help but feel his eyes prickle. He had always believed it was he who protected this family, who shielded his sisters from the storms. Little did he know it had always been his sister carrying the weight for him. Sis, painting. Do you still want to paint? Shin Jinghan sniffled, looking at her earnestly. If you want to paint, don't worry about the company matters. I'll handle them, whether you want to go to Paris or anywhere else. Just say the word and I'll arrange it for you. Shensi shook her head with a smile. Silly little brother. It's been so many years now. I think managing such a large corporation and helping thousands of people make money is much more interesting than painting. Besides, if I left, who would shield you from all those demons and monsters? Who would help you clean up these messes? But if you really want to make it up to me, then don't live so exhaustingly from now on. Don't shoulder everything alone. If anything happens, talk to me, talk to the family. We're family, aren't we? Shin Jinghan nodded heavily, his throat choked with emotion, unable to speak. He finally understood that, in these 18 years, the stupidest thing wasn't fighting wits with thin air, nor was it being deceived by the system for 18 years. It was that he, who clearly possessed the world's warmest family, had treated them as objects of suspicion, trapping himself in a solitary fortress for 18 years without finding a way out. Just as he had calmed his emotions and was about to return to his room, someone called out to him, Shin Jinghan. Cool, composed female voice came from behind. Shin Jinghan turned around to see Shin Qingyan standing at the doorway of the studio. Watching him, she was wearing a simple white shirt with a bit of paint still on it, holding a paintbrush in her hand, still maintaining that aloof and proud demeanor. Second sister, what's wrong? Shin Jinghan looked at her, feeling a bit uneasy inside. After all, back then, to prevent her from being exploited by the real young master, he had secretly manipulated many things, sending her abroad for 3 years and cutting off many of her opportunities to connect with the domestic scene. Come in. Shin Qingyan dropped the sentence and turned to walk into the studio. Shin Jinghan hesitated for a moment but still followed her inside. The studio was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a garden. Sunlight streamed in, casting its glow over the numerous paintings scattered across the floor. Easels and paint were everywhere, and the air was filled with the scent of turpentine. Shin Qingyan walked up to an easel and pulled off the cloth covering it. It was an oil painting depicting the lawn of the Shin family's old estate. Under the setting sun, a small boy sat on the grass, holding a thick financial report in his hands. His tiny brows were tightly furrowed, and his eyes carried a weight far beyond his years. The little boy in the painting was Shin Jinghan as a child. I found out 3 years ago that I wasn't a child of the Shin family, Shin Qingyan said, her voice cold and devoid of emotion as she gazed at the painting. I secretly took a DNA test the day the results came out. I painted this. Shin Jinghan abruptly raised his head to look at her. So she had known all along. I know you sent me abroad back then because you were afraid I might be used by others. Afraid I'd stand against you. Shin Qingyan turned her head to look at him, a faint trace of amusement flickering in her cool eyes. Shin Jinghan, do you perhaps underestimate me a little too much? I have no interest in the Shin family's wealth or the Shin Corporation. All I want in this life is to paint, whether I'm a child of the Shin family or not. Dad, eldest sister, you and Ningguan are all my family. That will never change. I'm not staying with the Shin family because I covet its wealth and luxury, but because this is my home. The place that raised me for 21 years isn't something I can just walk away from so easily. She walked over to another easel and pulled off the cloth covering it. In that painting, the Shin family was depicted. Shun Hongyuan sat in the main seat. Shensi stood beside him. Shin Jinghan stood at the forefront. Shin Ningguan rested on his shoulder, and she herself stood at the very edge, wearing a faint smile on her face. The painting was overwhelmingly warm. Also, I knew about the laxative in Sun Yan's soup all along, Shin Qingyan said, curling her lips into a faint smile. Her little tricks are no different from child's play in my eyes. I just couldn't be bothered to deal with her. If she behaves herself and stays quietly in this family, I wouldn't mind having another sister, but if she stirs up trouble or tries to harm anyone in the family, I won't stand by and do nothing. Shin Jinghan stared at her, completely stunned. He had always believed that Shin Qingyan was the most naive and unworldly person in this family. Yet it turned out she had seen through everything long ago. She just chose not to speak of it. Just as Shin Jinghan was experiencing the most embarrassing moment of his life, his phone suddenly rang. It was his younger sister, Shin Ningguan, calling. He answered the phone, but before he could say anything, he heard Shin Ningguan's playful voice coming through the line, tinged with a hint of pride. Third brother, I dug up all the dirt on Qin Feng that you asked me to investigate. He's been secretly transferring company assets, cooking the books, evading taxes, and I even hacked all his chat records and call recordings with Sun Yan. I even dug up his browsing history from 10 years ago. Shin Jinghan was stunned. Ningguan, what are you talking about? When did I ask you to investigate Qin Feng? You don't have to hide it from me, Shin Ningguan said with a giggle. I've known for a long time. All those computers in your study. I'm the one who's been maintaining them. The firewalls for your offshore companies overseas. I wrote them all. If it weren't for me, your operations back then would have caught the attention of Interpol long ago. Third brother, your little sister here is one of the top 3 elite hackers on the dark web. Codename, Evening Star. Pretty impressive. Ha! Shin Jinghan stood frozen in place, phone in hand, his mind completely blank. Finally, he understood. In this household, there was no naive sweetheart, no mascot, no innocent little girl. Only he alone was the biggest fool. He had schemed for 18 years, guarded for 18 years, only to discover that the entire family were hidden powerhouses, while he alone had been battling wits with thin air. The truth that the whole family were hidden powerhouses took Shin Jinghan a full day to barely come to terms with. Social death aside, his heart had never felt more at ease. He was no longer alone. Standing behind him was the entire Shin family. Since Qin Feng wanted to play, he would gladly keep him company. Shin Jinghan immediately gathered his core team and held a 3-hour video conference. By the time it ended, an inescapable net had been silently cast over Qin Feng and the Qin group. He wanted Qin Feng to understand that no matter who you provoke, you must never provoke the Shin family, and especially not him. First to strike was Shin Ningguan, this top-tier hacker, ranked among the top 3 on the dark web, anonymously reported all the evidence of Qin Feng's tax evasion, fraudulent accounting, and embezzlement of company assets to the tax authorities and the Securities Regulatory Commission. That very afternoon, investigation teams from the tax authorities and the Securities Regulatory Commission directly entered the Qin Group headquarters, seizing all of its financial records. The stock price of the Qin Group plummeted that very day, hitting the limit down. Next to take action was Shensi. She directly secured unanimous approval at the board meeting for a plan to target the Qin Group. The Shin Group deployed massive funds to aggressively buy up the Qin Group's circulating shares in the secondary market, while simultaneously collaborating with the Qin Group's major partners to terminate all cooperation with the Qin Group, cutting off funding, cutting off channels, cutting off the market. With 3 decisive strikes, the Qin Group was plunged into an unprecedented crisis. Meanwhile, Shin Hongyuan was far from idle. Although he had been a mere figurehead for several years, His decades of experience in Jiangqing's business world had left him with an unfathomable network and deep-rooted influence. With just a few phone calls, he managed to freeze all major bank loans to the Qin Group, cutting off the fuel to extinguish the fire and severing Qin Feng's last lifeline. As for Shen Jinghan, from beginning to end, he never personally intervened. He simply sat in his study, watching Qin Feng step by step walk into the trap he had laid, witnessing the Qin Group inch closer to its downfall. He wanted Qin Feng to understand clearly that what he had provoked was not just Shen Jinghan alone, but the entire Shen family. In just 3 short days, the Qin Group went from being a top-tier powerhouse in Jiangqing to teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. Qin Feng had completely lost his mind. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't understand. He had only intended to use Sun Yan to stir up trouble within the Shen family. So how had it provoked such a full-scale retaliation from them? Moreover, the intensity of this retaliation was something he simply couldn't withstand. He finally realized that he had provoked someone he shouldn't have. He wanted to seek peace, to request a meeting with Shen Jinghan. But Shen Jinghan refused to see him. Every time he called Shen Jinghan's number, it was always unreachable. When he went to the Shen Corporation, he couldn't even get past the front gate. With no way out, he could only place all his hopes on Sun Yan, calling her hysterically, demanding that she steal the Shen Corporation's core secrets, sow discord within the Shen family, and even poison Shen Jinghan. Anything to bring down the Shen family, no matter the cost. But he didn't know that his entire phone call was being monitored by Shen Ningwan, recorded clearly from start to finish. And Sun Yan at last came to her senses. She watched Qin Feng's hysterical state and the continuous plummeting of the Qin Group stock price, finally realizing that she had been used by Qin Feng. Qin Feng never intended to help her. He merely wanted to use her as a weapon, a blade to destroy the Shen family. Once the Shen family collapsed, she too would be discarded by Qin Feng without a second thought, having outlived her usefulness. As for the Shen family, though she had only recently returned, Shen Hongyuan's guilt toward her was genuine, and the care he gave her was real. Even Shen Qingyan had never truly made things difficult for her, and had even spoken up for her when the servants gossiped behind her back. For 21 years, she had resented the person involved in the mistaken identity, resented all the suffering she had endured. But what she truly wanted was never to drive anyone out of the Shen family or to destroy anyone. It was simply a home, a real home that belonged to her, having figured everything out. Sun Yan took her phone and walked into Shen Jinghan's study. She truthfully told Shen Jinghan all about her chat records and call recordings with Qin Feng, as well as everything he had instructed her to do, without holding anything back. After finishing, she lowered her head, her voice tinged with a hint of sobs and guilt. "I'm sorry, third brother. I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have been swayed by Qin Feng, shouldn't have thought of sowing discord, and shouldn't have caused trouble for the family. Whatever punishment you decide, I'll accept it." Shen Jinghan sat behind the desk, looking at the girl before him who was trembling with her head bowed, feeling not the slightest bit surprised. He had long anticipated this day. Sun Yan wasn't inherently bad. It was just that 21 years of hardship had worn down her spirit, and resentment had clouded her judgment, leading her to be manipulated by Qin Feng. "Knowing you were wrong is enough." Shen Jinghan's voice was calm, without a trace of reproach. "You need to understand. This is your home. We are your family, not your enemies. Whatever you desire, as long as it's reasonable, the family will provide it for you. There's no need to resort to underhanded means to seize it. Leave Qin Feng's matter to me. I'll handle the rest." Sun Yan suddenly raised her head, looking at Shen Jinghan with eyes full of shock and a trace of disbelief. "Third brother, you don't blame me. You are my father's biological daughter, my second sister, and a member of the Shen family." Shen Jinghan said calmly as he looked at her. "When family makes a mistake, correcting it is enough. But remember, this is the last time. If there's a next time, I won't be so lenient." Tears instantly fell from Sun Yan's eyes. This time, it wasn't an act, but genuine remorse and gratitude. She nodded heavily and choked out, "Thank you, third brother. I promise I'll never do it again. I'll never do anything to hurt our family again. After leaving the study, Sun Yan went straight to find Shin Qingyan. She stood at the door of the studio, bowed deeply to Shin Qingyan, and said earnestly, "Second sister, I'm sorry. I was blinded and targeted you, causing you trouble. I apologize." Shin Qingyan looked at her, remained silent for a few seconds, then replied calmly, "It's fine. Live well from now on and don't dwell on unnecessary things. This is your home. There's no need to tread so carefully." Thus, the farce of the true and false heiresses came to an end. As for Qin Feng's fate, it had long been sealed. A week later, the Qin Group officially announced bankruptcy liquidation. Qin Feng was formally arrested by the police on multiple charges, including tax evasion, financial fraud, and embezzlement of public funds. What awaited him was the severe punishment of the law and a prison sentence. Before his downfall, Qin Feng still couldn't figure out where exactly he had lost. He didn't know that what he was facing was never just an 18-year-old boy, but a top-tier tycoon who had dominated Wall Street, along with the entire hidden power of the Shin family. His defeat was destined from the very beginning. With the trouble of Qin Feng resolved, the Shin family returned to its former tranquility. Sun Yan completely let go of the resentment in her heart and settled down peacefully in the Shin household. Shensi hired a tutor for her to help her catch up on her studies, preparing her to retake the college entrance exam and attend the university of her dreams. She finally set aside her lingering grudges and became true sisters with Shin Qingyan. The two often went shopping together, chatted, and got along harmoniously. Shin Jinghan also finally let go of all his defenses. He no longer kept his nerves on edge every day, no longer worked around the clock, no longer schemed against others, and no longer set up those pointless traps. He finally began to enjoy the life of a wealthy heir. 18 years overdue, waking up naturally every day, playing games, racing cars, going out for drinks with friends, and traveling, occasionally dropping by the company to help Shensi handle tricky projects and spending the rest of his time with family. He accompanied Shin Hongyuan for tea and fishing, went to business banquets with Shensi, attended art exhibitions with Shin Qingyan, played games with Shin Ningguan, and helped Sun Yan choose schools. At last, he realized that across 2 lifetimes, what he truly desired was never supreme power or a trillion-dollar fortune, but a warm home and a family he could trust without reservation. The days passed by peacefully and happily, until one night a month later, when Shin Jinghan was sound asleep, a familiar cold and mechanical electronic voice suddenly echoed in his mind, nearly making him jump out of bed on the spot. "Ding. Host, I'm back." It was that damn system that had tricked him for 18 years and then run away with its tail between its legs. Shin Jinghan instantly snapped awake, screaming furiously in his mind, "You dare come back? You damn scammer. You tricked me for 18 years. I didn't even go looking for you to settle the score, and you actually delivered yourself to my doorstep. Host, don't be mad. Don't be mad. I know I was wrong. I came back this time to make amends and to warn you. Something huge is about to happen." The system's voice carried an unprecedented note of panic and urgency. Shin Jinghan sneered. "Something huge? What could possibly be so huge? Did you bind the wrong host again? Or grab the wrong script? No. This time it's really serious." The system babbled frantically. "Host, didn't I tell you before that I'm a system from the Male Protagonist Bureau? 18 years ago, when I was binding you, I got bumped into by a system from the Female Protagonist Bureau. That's why I bound the wrong person and got the wrong script. The system that crashed into me was the true and false heiress counterattack system bound to Sun Yan. It didn't hit me by accident. It was intentional." Shin Jingyan's brows instantly furrowed. "What do you mean? Host, this world isn't just a simple female-oriented true and false heiress novel world. It's a merged world. The male-oriented true and false heir novel and the female-oriented true and false heiress novel have fused together." The system's voice carried a hint of gravity. That true and false heiress counterattack system is a rogue system from the female-oriented bureau. It's had its eyes on this world for a long time, wanting to turn it into its own domain and absorb this world's fortune. 18 years ago, its original intended host was you. It wanted to make you its puppet to control the entire Shin family and seize the fortune of this world. I was sent by the male-oriented bureau to stop it, but it deliberately crashed into me, making me bind to the wrong script. For 18 years, I mistakenly thought you were the fake heir. It interfered with me for 18 years. It originally thought that even with me around, you would be abandoned by everyone and ruined in reputation at the age of 18 due to your identity as the fake young master, allowing it to take advantage of the situation and control you. But it never expected that you would directly take over the entire family, becoming the chosen one of this world's fortune, making it impossible for it to even get close to you. So it settled for the next best option by binding with Sun Yen, intending to use Sun Yen to disrupt the Shin family, destroy you, and seize this world's fortune. Qin Feng was also manipulated by it. It had planned to use Qin Feng's hands to bring down the Shin family, but it never anticipated that your entire family were all powerhouses, directly crushing Qin Feng and completely foiling its plans. Shin Jinghan sat on the bed, utterly stunned. He had initially thought this was just a simple case of a system binding to the wrong person by mistake. Who would have thought there was such a huge conspiracy behind it? Where is it now? Shin Jinghan immediately asked. It ran away, the system said. This plan failed and it couldn't stay in this world any longer. It's already gone. But host, it won't give up. It will definitely come back. It will find a way to take revenge and steal this world's fortune. I came back this time because the male protagonist bureau sent me to protect you. Let's join forces and stop it together. Host, let's rebind this time. I swear I won't trick you again. I'll give you cheat abilities. The invincible kind. Cultivation. Superpowers. Business genius. Whatever you want. I'll give it to you. The system's voice carried a hint of ingratiation and a touch of urgency. Shin Jinghan fell silent for a few seconds before suddenly laughing, leaning against the headboard, and said indifferently, "No need." Ah, the system was stunned. Host, what did you say? No need. It's a rogue system, very dangerous. Without me, you can't handle it. First, Shin Jinghan said, his tone calm but firm. In this lifetime, what I despise the most is having my fate arranged for me, being led by the nose by a script. 18 years ago, you handed me the script of a fake young master, making me fight shadows for 18 years. I will never forget that for the rest of my life. Second, I don't need any golden fingers or supernatural abilities. Over 2 lifetimes, everything I've ever wanted, I've obtained with my own hands. I can control the Shin family. I can bring down Qin Feng. And even if that traitorous system comes back, I can handle it just the same. Third, and most importantly, a gentle smile curled at Shin Jinghan's lips. I now have a family, people I want to protect. I won't let any system, any script, shackle my life again. My life is mine to decide. Host, the system still wanted to say something. Go now. Shin Jinghan interrupted its words, his tone calm yet carrying an unshakable resolve. Return to where you belong. My life doesn't need a system to dictate it. The system fell silent for a long time before finally sighing, its voice tinged with a hint of remorse and admiration. I understand. Host, I'm sorry for tricking you 18 years ago. If that rogue system ever returns and you're in danger, just call for me. I'll come without fail. May you and your family always be happy and safe. Goodbye. Host, after a crackling burst of static, the electronic voice in his mind vanished once again. This time, Shin Jinghan felt no ripple of emotion in his heart. He threw off the covers, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, and pushed it open. The pre-dawn wind carried a hint of chill as it swept in, brushing against his cheeks. Outside, dawn was approaching. A hint of fishbelly white appeared on the eastern horizon, as the dawn was about to pierce through the darkness and bathe the entire land in light. Shin Jinghan gazed at the slumbering Shin family estate below, the home he had guarded for 18 years, a gentle smile curling at the corners of his lips. 18 years ago, he had been reborn into this world through fetal transmigration, thinking he had been handed a death script set to the hardest difficulty. For 18 years, he had laid plans, advancing step by step with meticulous calculation, all for the sake of survival. But in the end, he realized that what he had received was never a script of death, but the happiest script, one surrounded by love. So what if the system was bound to the wrong person? So what if he spent 18 years outsmarting thin air? He had the best family in the world and the warmest home. This was enough. As for what the future held, whether that defected system would return, none of it mattered anymore. He was Shin Jinghan, the third young master of the Shin family, the helmsman of the Shin group. As long as he was with his family, there was no obstacle they could not overcome. The dawn finally pierced through the darkness, casting golden sunlight over the entire estate, also falling upon Shin Jinghan. His 18th year had only just begun. His life, too, had only just begun.